Today's webinar is Start Saving, Start Solving the Pandemic and its Impacts on Small and Medium Businesses. And we'll walk you through a quick agenda. Today, we are going to be talking with Doug Tedder and Ardi Kolah, plus Hunter Dersch. And what we're going to be talking about are three specific areas. One, shrinking IT budgets during the pandemic and what it means for small IT teams. The considerations of implementing open source solutions, and the conversation stems around whether is it always a budget-wise decision. And the third piece that we'd like to cover off on today is why security and compliance need to be a top consideration for SMBs during the pandemic. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is going to be a 60-minute session. We really want to make this new format more interactive than we have had in the past. So we welcome your questions. There are folks that are standing live on the chat, so please feel free to put your questions through. And as we go through each of these different sections, we can address the questions, and it'll really help shape the conversation that we're having today. At the end of the session, there will also be another opportunity for you to ask any additional questions that you may have missed. Let me tell you a little bit about our panel today. I'm going to go ahead and start off with Doug Tedder. We have worked with Doug on numerous times in the past, and we always welcome him back because he is a recognized industry leader. He's a thought leader. He's really passionate about helping and inspiring our IT organizations, and really at the end of the day has a very successful track record of helping these organizations as they move through different areas of their business. So we want to welcome Doug Tedder.
Hello.
Hey Doug. Fantastic. Our next presenter is going to be Ardi Kolah, and Ardi just brings a fantastic global perspective. He is an innovative global privacy advisor. He's also the founding editor of the Journal of Data Protection and Privacy, and he has been an advisor to numerous organizations around the world on GDPR. So he'll help us provide that perspective and how it applies to small and medium businesses. Hi, Ardi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you very much, Carla, and also a big welcome to all of you who have joined us today, wherever you are, and you're very welcome.
One really quick thing. I just want to give a quick introduction, Ardi, to Hunter, who's going to be our third panelist, and he will, I just want to give a quick introduction and let you know Hunter is going to be giving us a perspective that he has on a daily basis with our customer set. And really, Hunter is one of the best sales engineers we have and a product expert on the tools portfolio. So he really is able to align how our solutions can help our customers during the pandemic. So Ardi, with that being said, now I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
That's good. Thank you so much for correcting me. And it would have been very rude of me to have missed out Hunter. I've been told off later. Great to have you with us. I think we've got a lot to get through, and there's plenty to think about. So to help us, I think we've got some of the brightest minds on the planet. Isn't that right, Doug?
Yeah.
What we're going to do, we're going to start with, as you've just heard, budgets for IT. Now, before you decide that this is a boring subject, we're going to tell you actually it's not boring at all. It's actually very interesting. And it's an important decision, really, for all of us, is where we spend our money, and where you spend your money, of course. And, of course, this is complicated right now when we have to take COVID-19 into account. In normal times, slashing costs, pretty much we can do that without much thought. But choosing what to cut and also what to spend, now that requires a bit more deeper thought, in our view. Anything that makes you more at risk from being a target for hackers and for seeing an increase in data breaches. Well, that's probably not a good idea. Those sort of things are protecting you. So it's probably not a good idea to cut those. So what it does mean in this currently crazy world that we're all living in is that risk has increased, and you're going to hear about that a bit more through the course of the next 60 minutes. It also means, as a result of that you have to be really careful in what you invest in terms of good cybersecurity and data protection, not just for yourself, because that's important too, but of course for your customers and your clients, because you have an obligation to them. That's not just a legal obligation, it's a moral obligation, it's an ethical obligation too. And of course, all of us feel that right now, even as we speak as business people, but we're also customers too. So we want to share that with those thoughts with you today. And with budgets being tight, and that's an important consideration, it's perhaps even more important to get this right. So before we hear from Hunter, I want to get your take, Doug, on this, because I think you feel quite passionate about this, don't you?
Yeah, Ardi, I really do. It's we're living in some tough times right now, and to your point, the pandemic has really caused us to do some things very differently. Budgets have been slashed, revenues are slashed, and SMBs have been disproportionately affected by all of this. It really wasn't fair. Right. The SMB IT organization already was a smaller budget, smaller team size, and now we're being asked to cut a little bit more. But the reality is that I feel like today, now is the time to invest in technology and invest in IT. But the challenge is, where do we find the money? And one of those areas where I think that might be a new way of thinking is take an old concept, and that's called governance. And typically, SMBs and SMB IT organizations haven't thought a whole lot about governance. They've typically thought about governance as something those larger IT shops do. But I think now, to your point, where do we spend our money and how do we spend our money really calls for establishing some basic governance.
Okay.
And don't be intimidated by that.
Yeah. Now, you've used this interesting word, governance, not something we normally talk about, is it really? So just very briefly for us, Doug, what do you mean by governance?
Yeah, governance, it's nothing more than just doing the right things. Who's going to make what decisions involve what people? Mm-hmm. That's what governance is really all about.
So it's the framework for decision-making, effectively?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
That's really interesting. Thank you for that. We're going to hear more from you, of course, as we go through. But let's just bring in Hunter. Hunter's been listening to what you've been talking about. Hunter, let's bring you in here. Any observations at this stage?
Absolutely. I mean, we've had a lot of our users, needing to jump to new solutions on the fly. They've had to make quick decisions, and now they're being faced with this opportunity, as Doug really put it, to move to new solutions, to sort of consolidate, to answer those questions that we have with the fewest steps possible. And whether that's a lot of our users who are moving to cloud-based tools, who were previously on-premise, they can make use of our tools like Dameware and SolarWinds Service Desk to reduce the dependency on some of those on-premise servers, to shut some of those off even, to reduce their dependency on VPN.
Great. We're gonna pick that up again a bit later. But thank you so much for flagging that up. We need to have tools, and those things can help us as part of a package of things we need to think about. I mean, some of the challenges aren't just about to know what to buy, to answer your point, really, but also when to buy it. And I guess with smaller teams, the need to be more IT efficient kind of rises to the top of the to-do list for many SMBs. Now, research company Gartner, and we're going to reference a couple of bits of research as we go through the next 60 minutes, so not many. But research by Gartner, they've done some analysis here, and they found that around, as you can see on the screen, 90% of small to mid-sized businesses will delay in investing in new long-term projects. And what they're going to do instead is they're going to focus on short-term and tactical projects all the way through to 2021. Okay, so is that the right thing to do, or are they taking a bit of a gamble, Doug?
Yeah, it's tough, right? We're faced with reduced revenues, increased expenses. We're paying for some of the aspects of the pandemic, but I would challenge folks that when you think about it, at some point the pandemic is going to be over. And the thing that we are seeing as we come through this is that the demand for technology and the reliance on technology is only increasing. So while I can understand why you might want to delay some of those longer term strategic things, I think it's important, especially for the SMB, to take this longer view. There may be some smaller steps that you can take to get you to where you think you're going to be as a business in 2021. So I would be careful there.
Okay, Hunter, you've obviously been talking to a lot of SMBs, and has the conversation moved towards looking at long-term versus short-term, the kind of point that Doug has just made?
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of these businesses see this as sort of a pause, whereas I think, the way moving forward, we see a lot of people now sort of shifting that to an opportunity to plan moving forward strategically. And I think that's where we can sort of figure out the fewest number of steps to answer our problems, new solutions to the changing environment, and certainly ways to consolidate all across the board.
So we're not looking at just at what to buy and how to buy. We're looking at cost efficiencies within the business itself as well, aren't we? To do things more efficiently, right? Okay,
Absolutely.
Great. That's great. As you may have heard at the beginning, we've got a number of polls through the course of the webinar, and I think Carla has details of our first poll. Carla.
So you'll see some poll questions coming through, as Ardi said, and this is just going to help us really shape the conversation. So the first one is up there, and we want to get a better understanding of where you see the biggest opportunity or space for improvement in terms of streamlining or automation in your organization. So if you could just take a moment to answer that, Ardi. That's
great. I wouldn't know what the answer is, and I know you didn't mean me to answer it, but obviously we'd like you to start thinking about these things, and it'll help to inform the conversation, and that's what we want to do, and we'll get you some time to think about that, and of course send your thoughts to us, and we would like to learn a bit more from your point of view. But let's just move on. Keeping with IT spending, Gartner also reports that the chief information officers will look to extend the lifespan of their IT infrastructure investments from 3 to 5 years, which sounds like an enormous amount of time in internet speak, doesn't it? 3 to 5 years, it's like a lifetime. And they're thinking of doing this as a way of conserving funds, which we understand and we get. And they're also considering turning to open source software as part of the IT solution. Okay, so maybe some of us have come across this before. We may have read articles which have talked about this. Doug, I want to bring you back in here. Do you think CIOs of SMBs have got the starting point right in thinking about this issue?
That's a really tough question, and I can understand from the SMB CIO perspective that we've got to stretch our monies, right? We've got to stretch our dollars out a little bit. But, I talked a little bit earlier about governance and establishing those decision rights and what are the criteria. We got to look also at the longer view. Where do we see the SMB going in the next 2 to 3 years? Perhaps you can get away with stretching out your infrastructure investments a little bit longer, but open source is kind of a tough spot, and I understand the allure. It looks like it's fairly inexpensive, but thinking about it from a governance perspective and looking at it from a total cost of ownership, the price point or the entry point to getting onto those open source environments or systems may seem cheap, but then what's the impact on the IT organization, and is the organization willing to invest in the skills needed for their IT teams to actually support that open source on and on? I mean, you're on your own from a support perspective with these open source solutions by far and large. So, is it the right thing to do? I would give it some thought and really think back to the longer term. Where do we see ourselves as an organization? How can we better leverage technology?
So are you saying then that although you hear the pain that people are going through in terms of having to cut costs and all the rest of it and thinking about where they can save money, are you saying that actually that's not the right starting point? The right starting point is to have a bit more of a strategic view of where your business is going and taking not just a short-term view, but a sort of longer-term view?
Yeah, I would agree. You got to take those longer-term views. We can't afford to make many missteps, especially in the S&P environment. So look at the longer view. How am I going to get there now? How do I conserve cash between now and then? Well, maybe we need to adjust our processes. Maybe we need to look at where we can drive efficiencies. Processes have a tendency to drift over time, and certainly our processes have likely changed over the last 6 months as we've been going through this pandemic. So maybe there's an opportunity to get some efficiency back, save some money. Maybe there's also some opportunity because business models have changed. Maybe there's an opportunity to turn off some systems that we don't need any longer. And by, again, looking through your processes and understanding where there might be opportunities for improvement, you may also identify opportunities for some real cost savings by turning off legacy systems.
Okay, so I think in summary, what you're saying, Doug, is you need to take a cold, hard look at your IT processes first before jumping to any conclusions about hanging on to legacy systems, which is what you've just been talking about, or simply assuming that open source software is always the safest and cheapest option.
Right. I would agree.
So we can't afford to make those kind of wide assumptions when we're thinking about how we're going to be meeting the challenges that we're all facing as SMBs. Many watching this webinar, of course, may want to hold on to their IT infrastructure rather than embrace anything new. Many SMBs are afraid of change and perhaps not everyone's very confident in making change, and some may be less confident in doing that. And making a new purchase in these challenging times, for some people that could spell risk. It could be a chance for getting things wrong. Is there anything that you can say that can put people's minds at rest, Hunter?
I think you all covered a wide range of critical points. It's one, using the tools that you have smartly, but in that, planning is crucial. How do you make sure you're getting the full value out of the tools that you have? And then when it comes to making new decisions, adding on new products, adding on further value, how do we make sure that we're getting that value, and how do we make sure we're doing that in a time-effective way? And I think that's where we come in with having support on both the front and the back end. So you have support on both sides with our tools. Pre-sales, which is the department I'm a part of, to assist with those challenges that you're going to be faced with moving to new platforms. After you purchase, the support doesn't end there. You have 24/7 support from our dedicated team of experts. You have access to our Success Center. We have our online forums, THWAC. We also have a free training through SolarWinds Training Academy. That's included when you purchase the product. And so I think that you have these customers who are then able to get that full value out of our tools immediately. And so then we see these customers who check out a demo, and over the course of an hour call, they expect to just see the product, have an idea of what they may be able to get out of it. And rather than just that, we actually have the product up, running, and monitoring exactly what it is they're looking to do by the end of the call.
Let's just go back to something you just said, which I think is quite important, and I'll come back to you, Doug, about this as well. Training. I mean, one of the issues that people have with bringing in new software or new technology is it may be great coming out of the box. It's all nice and shiny and new, but actually, when it's in the environment, unless people are properly trained to use it, they don't get those benefits, do they? How easy or how much of a challenge is it to get our SMB audience and our SMB stakeholder group to be trained to use some of the things that you've been talking about?
So I think we're with the customer every step of the way, and that's kind of our role has sort of been designed to have the customer in mind from start to finish, from setting it up, getting off the ground. Anytime there is a challenge, what happens there? And that's why we have a team for when something inevitably may go wrong. There's someone there to support you. There's someone there to fall back on, and an expert knowledge database in case the inevitable may end up happening. Course.
So Doug, listening to Hunter talk about that, how important do you think is that support that Hunter was just describing, and within that training for SMBs in terms of making the best use of this investment, which clearly they will be doing, to get efficiencies, for example?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you think about it, data and technology is really the foundation for any business, but especially in the small to medium space. Having that efficiency, taking advantage and leveraging technology is critical. That's how. That's one of the ways that an SMB can compete with these larger enterprises. And you're only going to be as good as your expertise supporting that technology. So finding money, finding time to train and doing something more formal, maybe enlisting some help in that regard to help take advantage of that technology really helps an SMB realize the return on the investment. It's not just purchasing the product and putting it out of the box and installing it on the server, but it really is leveraging and exploiting the capabilities. The only way you're going to get there is get some good training, learning how to do it right the first time versus stumbling your toes, much more efficient.
And Hunter, in your experience in working with SMBs, are we talking about a long period of time before people are really able to come up to speed and use these tools? Or are we talking about something which can be picked up quite quickly, it's very intuitive and not so painful?
Well, of course, it's going to depend on the amount of time that they have to be able to dedicate to these things. But I would say the majority of our customers are able to see that value right away. I mean, the second we get on a call, it's looking at their product in their environment. It's assisting them with their specific needs. And so I think that adds that value. It adds that, you have somebody to actually bounce that off of rather than just being left blind to a new product in your environment.
And before we move on, I'm also interested to know about community, because it's something which is really important, isn't it, Doug? The community out there. We see a lot of chat groups and other things out there where users can exchange ideas and thoughts and experiences. And sometimes, although I'm sure that the training is terrific, Hunter, there's also this opportunity to learn from others. Doug, how important is community in the mix here when we're thinking about making these investments?
Well, if I look back over my career, I have to tell you that had I not had the support of a great sharing and open community, I don't know that I would have advanced as much as, I feel like I've advanced because of that community. Being able to talk to someone else, another peer that is going through a similar kind of situation, or bounce ideas off of, exchange information. Hey, did you find this feature? Hey, this is how this works. I've got this particular challenge at my place. And having a peer to talk to in that regard in the community can be so beneficial. So complement your training with joining and becoming part of a community, and it really, quadruple your benefits from that training.
That's really good to hear. And just going back to you, Hunter, I mean, how does SolarWinds support communities so that there's this kind of shared learning that Doug was just talking about?
Sure. So, I mean, a lot of times we'll face challenges that we are not completely familiar with. It may be an environment that's somewhat different than a typical environment. It may be a specific want or a specific need. And that's frankly where I'll turn first. I'll turn to our user forums. We have our experts. A lot of the team of engineers, my peers, make a lot of the posts on there. So that's one of the places that we will get that knowledge, and we start to gain that expertise ourselves, is even from those online forums, from having that community and that resource.
So that feedback is really, really important, isn't it? Because I guess that's put in the mix in terms of thinking about new products and services and tools, I guess.
Absolutely. That feedback is crucial.
Yeah, that's really good. That's really good to hear. And I hope that kind of makes people feel a bit more comfortable about the idea of making change. Because I know change is quite scary for an awful lot of us. And particularly when there's so much change going on, you kind of go, oh my goodness, even more change. But sometimes we have to take that step. We have to be a bit bold. But clearly, listening to this, there is support there, there's community there. And I think that's very reassuring. Okay, so I think we've got time for another poll. So it's back to you, Carla.
Ardi, you'll see the question pop up on your screen, and we want to hear a little bit about what is your experience with open source solutions.
Okay, thank you very much, Carla, for that. We're kind of coming towards the halfway stage. Time flies when you're having fun, right, Doug?
It does.
Yeah. I mean, Doug was talking about juggling to me earlier before you all came on the line. And I said, well, maybe at some point we can see his juggling techniques. But, you know, maybe we'll have to keep that to the end.
Maybe another webinar.
maybe that's a different webinar. What we're going to do now is we're going to discuss about how to make sure you don't become the next victim, the next crime statistic, because you don't want to be the next victim or the next crime statistic, and neither do I, neither does Doug or anyone else, for example. And one of the things that are out there, and I was looking at this last night before we came to the webinar today, and it is free of charge, is the Verizon Annual Data Breach Investigation Report, as it's called. It was called the Data Breach Report before, which is actually quicker to say than Annual Data Breach Investigation Report, but you get the idea. And what I like about this is it's again going back to community. They're sharing some excellent research with people. They segment it in terms of sectors, so depending which sector you're in, industrial or business or professional, there will be some really good intel in there in terms of understanding what the key vulnerabilities are, what the key issues are, what you can expect to be facing in your sector. And I think it's really, 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 really important. And as I said, you can download the report for free, and it's very interesting. And I've certainly used it in an education context as well. Now, one finding that sticks out, and it's on the screen, is that hackers and organized crime are targeting you. Are targeting SMBs, and that's really, that's a wake-up call for us right now, because we've seen an exponential increase in cyber crime activity because of COVID-19. And what also sticks out is that this accounts for more than 50% of all data breaches. So although we get the headlines of airlines and hotels having data breaches, the vast majority of this stuff that's happening is happening to us. It's happening to SMBs. And sometimes that doesn't always get into the news headlines. So looking at this and doing a bit of research, and we'll hear from you in a minute, Doug, there's been a noticeable increase in scams. Scams designed to trick people who are working remotely, thinking they're getting messages from the center. And in fact, they're not getting messages from the center. And they fall into the trap of actually sending sensitive or financially important information, thinking it's going to the center, when in fact it's not. And that's actually pretty scary if you think about it. And a lot of us are dealing with lots and lots of data. And I've also heard of things where people are getting invoices sent to them by suppliers, and they think, oh, we better pay that. And actually, it's not a real invoice, but people don't think about this. So it's very easy to trick people into making mistakes. So Doug, this figure on the screen, it's a big figure. Do you think this indicates that the majority of SMBs aren't taking these threats seriously?
That is an interesting number when you think about it. I'm not so sure that it's a matter of not taking it seriously, but not knowing perhaps what to do.
Okay.
When you think about it, and let's use the context of working from home that we've all had to go through, especially the SMB. We've never had to consider working from home in that context may not have done much remote work. Folks now that we're scattered about, there's no longer that on-premise support team that they could just go and ask the casual question, hey, I just got this email from a supplier. It doesn't seem legit. What do you think? Well, now we're on our own. And those folks that perhaps did work from home, especially in the SMB space, may have been a little more tech savvy, may have been just IT people. So now we've opened up this whole opportunity, to your point, Ardi, of scammers and hackers and those kind of things that that we have to be aware of. And part of it comes back to governance again. I keep governance theme, just establishing just some basic rules of the road, how we're going to work together. Part of it is just the end user being diligent. I got an email the other day from Microsoft. Hey, or supposedly from Microsoft. Hey, your password has been changed on your Office 365 account. I clicked on the from, and the domain was somewhere else. It wasn't Microsoft at all. I don't remember what it was, but it was obviously someone with some nefarious intent behind their email. So, yeah. We have to be aware of it. We have to have some due diligence. I think SMBs can ill afford a data breach. You can put them out of business. So we have to take the right steps right up front and just be aware that these things are happening, and SMBs are particularly vulnerable.
So given that this is a major threat, this is a major problem.
Yes.
I will come back to you, Hunter. Just thinking with Doug for the moment, is there a cost-effective way, in your experience, Doug, that we can protect ourselves and plug the gaps in security and compliance, which I guess is what you're talking about in terms of governance? Is there a cost-effective way of doing that? And I'll hear from you, Doug, and then we've got time to just explore this a bit more with Hunter. But back to you, Doug.
Yeah, we touched on education a little bit earlier, and how the importance of educating our IT resources so that we can take best advantage of solutions and systems out there. A very cost-effective approach toward combating these data breaches are educating the consumer, the folks that are working with the SMB systems day to day. These, the person that's handling the inventory or handling the accounting or those kind of things. Just understanding that these threats are there. Just to be diligent, to be aware. If it smells like spam, it probably is. I'm not expecting an invoice here at home, and first, those kind of things. So that can be the most cost-effective way to combating this, is just some end-user education.
And that's a really good point you've made, because there's plenty of really good guidance for SMBs out there, isn't there? And if we take the UK, of course, you may have guessed I'm actually in the UK, although you would never have known from my accent, would you, Doug? Really?
I thought maybe you were from Texas or somewhere.
Exactly. So here in the UK, we have the Information Commissioner's Office. So some of you on this webinar will go, yeah, of course we know that. But for some of you, there are your local regulatory board or your Information Commissioner's Office or your supervisory authority. They've got some really great ways of getting across what we've been talking about and how you can take some very effective steps, simple steps to protect yourself. So Hunter, how much of an issue is this for the people that you've been talking to, and what kind of thoughts and strategies and products and services has SolarWinds been thinking about in terms of making sure that this number that we're seeing on the screen goes down, doesn't go up?
So, critical to all of this, security are two separate things. I think the education, which Doug touched on, is critical, and I think that's where we can come in and making sure those customers are starting off on the right foot with, how they set up, how they design these tools. But further than that, the design of the tools themselves. Not all of the tools that are out there are created equal. Our tools have been sort of designed to help a wide range of different users meet compliance requirements. The tools are extremely flexible in how you set those up. From some of our tools now, like our Dameware suite of products, which are being used to help assist users from home, assist users get back into the office, access servers with critical data on them. And, those are designed for meeting those industry requirements easy. That Dameware tools meets those FIPS cryptography standards, supporting HIPAA guidelines, allowing users to configure an advanced level of security. They have multi-factor authentication, smart card options, to some of our other tools, like our ServView file transfer system. And what that allows you to do is, meet traffic at rest requirements, PCI data security standards, secure file transfer protocols. So all of this together, from both the design perspective and having that team to support you and making sure that your IT professionals and your end users are aware of how the tool works, and what to expect when using the tool, I think that as a whole can really help these teams to increase their security.
When we're thinking about data protection, data privacy, and security, Doug, there is a principle of data protection, data privacy by design. It's been around for as long as you and I have been around, I guess, or maybe even longer because we're so young, right? And do you think actually this would necessarily add to the cost of a product, or do you think products now have to have that baked into them? So actually, when we're doing things like we're talking about on this webinar, we should feel that actually someone's been thinking about this already, and they've got data privacy already baked into the products and the service where we are processing other people's customers and clients' personal data.
Yeah, I think that should be one of the shopping criteria, if you would, especially for the SMB, when they look at ways to manage not only their data but their customer data and those kinds of things. It ought to be something that goes on their shopping list. What is this solution doing to help me be smarter and ensuring that I'm compliant with rules and regulations, that kind of thing? Most tools, systems have access profiles already built in, so you can separate the user from the administrator from perhaps a manager, those kind of things. So that's already baked into your point. Certainly, wouldn't want to try to start anything from scratch. But I think most solutions nowadays, most modern solutions nowadays, have given that some thought because it's a very serious issue.
Sure. Yeah. I'm going to hold that thought there. We're going to come back to you, Hunter, on that very shortly. But before we do, we have time for Carla and her next poll.
The next poll question that you'll see is you want to get an understanding of how your organization is positioned in terms of security and compliance in the current environment. So you have some options there, and go ahead and let us know.
Great. Thank you, Carla. And we haven't dispensed with your services as yet. I'm sure you'll be coming back before we finish the webinar, so don't go away. Hunter, I want to call you back. We were just talking, and of course this is a perfect segue into thinking about products, thinking about data protection by design or privacy by design. Perhaps you can just spend a little bit of time just giving us a bit of a tutorial, if you like, in terms of the approach that SolarWinds has taken to some of these challenges that we've been talking about, in particular the issue around privacy and security, the things that Doug's been talking about in terms of governance, and obviously thinking about it from an efficiency point of view as well. Perhaps you can take us into a little tutorial about that, which would be really interesting for us to learn.
Most of the time when I get on a call with a user or with a customer, the first thing they have is they have a list of the criteria they need to have checked off to meet requirements to make sure that they feel good about their security. And sometimes that's not something that's an industry standard. Sometimes that's just something internal, and our goal there is to walk through that process with them to assure that they're meeting all the requirements from a regulatory perspective, but also making sure that they feel good about how they use the product, making sure that they have a full understanding of all the ways that they can lock down a tool from some of your help desk platforms, how you make sure that your users are only seeing the data, only seeing the questions or the categories of data that are relevant to them, making sure that we keep personal data and security sort of at the top of that list when we're doing things like remoting into a remote user's computer. How do we make sure that we have controlled access and have visibility into exactly who can and cannot do what on one of those sessions? So, I mean, from a customer perspective, I think that it's sometimes a conversation as well as making sure we can actually check off those regulatory standards and meet their compliance and regulation needs.
Okay, great. That's really helpful. And do you have any more information in terms of the things that you've been working on recently, or are there any new developments that we ought to know about in this space that could be of help?
So I know we certainly have continual updates to most of our products. We do continue to push out updates on now a bi-weekly basis to some of our cloud tools as security needs are continue to change and form. But you know, that's certainly at the core of what our development is focused around, is making sure that security is top priority. And then sometimes if we have a customer need that's maybe not met off the bat by one of our tools, that's where we have the ability to work with them flexibly, to plan strategically and say, well, maybe our tool doesn't meet your exact requirement here, but perhaps there's another way we can get around that. Maybe there's even a way to disable some of the functions or features, tool sets of one of the utilities that you're using that can, sort of circumnavigate that challenge entirely. So I've certainly had a few of those.
Okay, great. Carla, do we have another poll for our audience?
We do have one more poll, but I want to give Hunter a chance to talk a little bit about the SolarWinds Small Business Hub. Hunter, would you mind chatting a little bit here?
So here we have a wide range of tools that are designed for your small businesses. I know we've covered quite a few of those. I mentioned a few specific examples, but here's a hub where you can find all the products we talked about today and then some. So if you're interested in checking out a demo, finding more information on any of these tools, this is going to be a great place to start.
I think that the Small Business Hub will give everybody a better idea. Everything from network monitoring products all the way to help desk software. So take a look at the Small Business Hub, and if you are interested in a demo in one or more of these products, we can definitely schedule something with Hunter or one of our other SEs to provide you just the full demo and capability of the product. So we're very proud of all of these products that are specifically focused against small business and helping them solve the challenges that they're seeing in today's business environment.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. We're coming towards the end of the webinar, and we'd like, if you have a question, please don't be shy. You can use the panel on your screen to send us a question. Has anyone been brave enough, Carla, to send Doug or Hunter or me a question at the moment, or are they just watching at the moment?
You guys have done such a great job of addressing all of the questions that we haven't seen anything come through yet.
That's okay. Well, look, what I'm going to do then, because we've got a bit of time to do this, is to start to think about what are we going to see which is going to be different next year. So, Doug, I'm going to start with you. We're going through so much change right now, and SMBs are really being hit with a huge amount of change. It's going to be difficult to make some predictions, but what predictions can you make for 2021?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty safe in saying that working from home is going to become more and more reality. But I would also say this, is that we're not going to just always stay at home. I think one of the things that we're starting to realize is that, well, there is some productivity gains that have been, some organizations have experienced from working from home. There's also what we're missing is some of the mental health aspects that working from home, when we're isolated and not interacting with our teammates as frequently as we used to. So I think there's going to be a bit of a balance. I think the pendulum is way far left right now toward working from home for a good reason. But I don't think it's going to be a permanent thing, but it's going to be more of the, quote, new normal.
Yeah, or as I've heard it said, the next normal, because it's no longer being new. It's getting quite old at the moment. I'm not super old, Doug, although if I was being rude. No, I think it's a good point you've made. And I think the other thing in terms of predictions is our behavior is changing. Do you want us to say a little bit about that, Doug?
Yeah, one of
customers and clients is changing, right?
Yeah, one of the things, and I think this is a positive thing, we're all in this together. We're all recognizing that we're facing similar kinds of challenges, and the thing that I'm seeing is people are being a bit more accommodating, a bit more tolerant, if you will. Things that maybe 6 or 8 months ago we wouldn't have thought about. In a business environment now, it's okay for your kids to pop in on the camera on you. You may have just heard my home phone ringing. I tried to mute it before it. You may have heard the home phone ringing. People get that, and they understand that, and they recognize that we're all kind of working through the same kind of challenges. And you know what? It's okay.
It's a really interesting thought, isn't it? That we're trying to become more human in this whole awful situation that everyone finds themselves in. It's been a really weird year for everyone, really. It hasn't been a normal year at all. Hence, it's the next normal, if you like. Do you think technology has a role to play in helping us get the right work-life balance? Because I know that you and I work from home often, and sometimes it's very difficult to drag yourself away from your desk, and maybe not answer that email that's come in at 10 o'clock at night, although, you kind of think, well, if I do that, I can go and watch the TV after that or something. Do you think we're all becoming a bit stressed out by this and actually are working longer than we ought to, which is not healthy?
Yeah, I think I read some, and I don't recall where I read it, but I read a statistic that we are working longer now. Yeah, in the working from home environment, and it is one of those things that we have to be diligent about. Some tips that I've shared with some of my clients and customers is establish a boundary. When I'm in this room, this is when I work. When I'm outside of this room, I am no longer working, and just that physical separation can be very helpful. Yeah. Will technology, help us manage our behavior in that regard? It's an interesting question. Hey, Doug, you're working past 7:30. Don't you think it's time to take your dog for a walk and do things like that? Wouldn't that be an interesting kind of way to approach it? Have technology kind of help you?
I thought you had that app already, Doug. I'm really surprised that, it didn't tell you when to walk your dog. I mean, that's so important.
Hunter and I are working on something, but we can't talk about it just yet.
Oh, okay. Okay. Hunter, this whole idea of the work-life balance, and perhaps it leads me to kind of ask you about how the audience can re-envision what work can and should be done in the future that will require us to be at home or maybe at our place of operation. Is that something that SolarWinds is across at the moment and trying to figure out, how best to forward plan for that kind of thing?
Well, of course, that planning has to be strategic, and I think that technology, if nothing else, it connects us. And that's where we kind of run into some of the problems where we're always connected. So we have this technology that's always on. We have further ways to become connected. And so we have to have that strategic planning to make sure that we make use of the tools that we have to make sure that, now you have a ticketing system that works from anywhere. You have it that works from your mobile phone. I can connect up on my mobile device and connect to a server at work. But that also does mean that I now have that ability and have that tool at my disposal 24/7. So that's where, some of the decisions are going to have to be on the business itself and on the individual to decide when that line is crossed between your personal life and where your work meets that and where technology kind of brings the two together.
Yeah, of course. If you're employing people, you have to care about them, of course. But equally, you want to get the most out of people, right? Because you're a business. So, Doug, my final thought really is, how do you measure performance from people when you expect them to work from home? And of course, that's really important, particularly with the current situation we all face. You know, we need to be more efficient. We need to make more sales. How do you manage your team when they are actually working remotely?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think some organizations, management is having to rethink how they do exactly that. So there's two aspects that I would say here. One, we've got to get out of the widget mentality. I did 9 widgets today, therefore I've accomplished my goal. It is really about, and I'll kind of echo something Hunter said, how are we supporting the strategy organization? What are the outcomes that we are delivering that enable our customers to get benefit from the things that we produce or the services that we provide? We've got to think in terms of outcomes or results. And the second thing that I would say, I personally have been flipping the phrase around. We all talk about work-life balance. It is now life-work balance. Yeah. We've got to make, right? We've got to fit work into life, not life into work. And so technology can really help us in that regard. So if we need to shift some things, right? As long as we're hitting our goals, as long as we're hitting and delivering the results that our company and our customers are meeting, it's okay. We have to think in those, give ourselves permission to do those things.
Okay, but still we need those metrics. We need to hit those metrics. So, Hunter, before I hand over back to Carla, I just want to get you to look at your crystal ball and tell us what you're seeing in there.
So really, I think for next year, the coming year, the only thing we can expect is the unexpected. We'll need
Doug's line then. I told him not to say that. Yeah.
Maybe a little cliche, but I think it does certainly apply here.
Okay.
So we'll
unpack that a bit more. The unexpected. What else can we unexpect? I mean, we've had craziness. I mean, is there more craziness to come?
Well, I mean, I think as things return to the new normal, as you put it, we'll see, new challenges arising in places we may not have expected already. We've had, a vast majority of our users suddenly needing to support everyone from home. They're no longer on the domain. They no longer have the same ability to push updates. How do you connect to a user when they're having printer problems or even worse, internet problems? And so that's where we sort of find that we need tools and we need products that can answer those questions, whether you are at home or in the office. And then we need to, exactly as Doug put it, to have that strategic planning at the core of the organization for what our goals are, and then use that technology to align ourselves with those goals.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed, Hunter.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Doug, and back to Carla.
Well, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We want to thank everybody for joining the call, and want to say thanks again to Hunter, Ardi, and Doug for providing us their perspectives today. And thank you all for joining. We appreciate you taking the time to sit with us for an hour.